Lemonade. I got mint.
I call to order the March 2nd, 2020 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the absence of Treasurer Wagner, I need a motion to nominate a board member as Treasurer Pro Tempore.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Who are you nominating?
Oh, we haven't nominated the
yeah.
person yet. Okay, I need a nomination for Treasurer Pro Tem.
I thought we were
We're
voting
gonna
on
vote
to
on
do
it
it.
first.
Okay, but then I will nominate Board Member Bowers.
Congratulations.
All in
Second. What
favor?
is it? What is it?
All, nothing.
Okay,
It's
all right.
all in favor, signify
Aye.
by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just for your information, by statute, we're required to have a board member serve in that capacity, but Ms. Hughes is here to actually do the work for you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Okay, all righty. Ms. Hughes, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Present.
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr.
Present.
Lind? Mr.
Here.
Lindy? Mr. Messer?
Present.
President Jones?
Here. Thank you. Just to share with folks, as you can see, Board Member Mike Kowalski is not attending the meeting tonight. He is at home with his wife and brand-new baby boy, born on February 27th, James Michael Morosky. So that's why he's not here. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting February 24th, 2020, and the business meeting February 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Ms. Bolton is chairperson of Finance Committee and member of Audit Committee. Please present the February 26th Audit Committee meeting report.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, it was a kind of a remarkable meeting in not only the fact that we are bringing on new members, and we also elected a new chair of the Audit Committee. And by the way, the Audit Committee, for the public's understanding, is a community committee comprised of folks from around the district and beyond with financial expertise in a number of areas, and they review much of what we do and make great suggestions. The largest part of the meeting was a report on the internal audit that was done regarding the benefits programs in this district. It was quite extensive, and committee members had a number of suggestions. We appreciated both the internal auditor's approach as well as the people from BDO who had put this audit together and review together. The other piece is that we had as well the audit status report from our internal auditor provided the information about all of the audit statuses, and we have a number of audits that take place every year from outside groups as well as the internal work that we do. As you can see, it involves both medical benefits and network assessment, payroll, transportation, and a number of other items as well. The other piece that we should mention from the meeting is that the Ohio Department of Education also does certain audits and reviews for us, whether it's food service or McKinney-Vento, or whether it's consolidated ESCA work. So constantly there is supervision and review, both from internal forces and also external forces. We're glad to share that with you. Also, the internal auditor presented to us the audit committee, and it will be presented as well to the board finance committee, the calendar of her work, the audit committee work plan that will take us through this calendar year. Also submitted for review by the audit committee was the draft of the board finance committee's work plan. And then, as I mentioned, we had 2 new members recommended by the audit committee leadership after they had been reviewed and interviewed and their resumes had been compiled. We're glad to make the announcement that we have chosen 2 new folks that will be presented to the Finance Committee and then come back here for the board for approval. That final approval will be on April 1st, and they will take their seats on April 23rd. We also elected a chair for the Audit Committee, and Mr. Jim Heldman, and then a vice chair as well, Mr. Dan Holthouse. And for the board's review later on, the internal auditor has started to put a job description together for what it means to be the chair of the audit committee and what job responsibilities they might have. So all in all, a very, very important and lengthy and well-run meeting by the internal auditor. I submit for approval.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments about the report? Okay, I need a motion to approve the report.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Okay, does anyone have any kudos for tonight? The kudo man is not here.
I have 2 kudos.
Ms. Bowers.
I attended the, let me get it straight, district, semi-district tournament. I don't even know what I'm saying now. For Taft and Gamble Montessori on Saturday. Taft is moving on. Congratulations to Taft. Gamble had a good season, but was not able to take the win. So congratulations. I think Hughes is also moving on Friday. They play, Taft plays Saturday. So congratulations to those 2 teams that are moving forward for CPS.
Thank you. Any other kudos? Ms. Bolton.
Yes, just a quick one. I always enjoy getting the newspapers from our various high schools. And one of the items in the Walnut Hills high school newspaper was an article about Behind the Walnut Woods endeavor, which is an effort by the students and other members of the community to begin to take care of and maintain and begin to refresh and refurbish, if you will, those woods that are close to their campus. And I think it's the reason I think I'm very impressed with it, besides being a person that thinks that's important, is that this is capturing this whole kind of green movement throughout the district that's hitting a number of our high schools and is involving a number of our elementary schools, in part because of Vision 2020, I think, around the district. So I appreciate their work and their stewardship of the land that's on their campus.
Thank you. Mr. Messer.
Yes, I have a couple here. I happened to have a work meeting that had me coming down 75, and I took the wrong exit. But anyway, I was looping around through Carthage, and I did pop by our school there, which I didn't give the superintendent the heads up. It was not an official visit by any stretch, but I thought, since I was driving right by it, I should go in there. And A, they were so kind, and B, it was the cleanest school I think I've ever been in. Just everything sparkled. The staff that I met, the teacher lead, was just so joyous about her school and proud. The principal was out at a meeting. I understand they have multiple schools there, but I just wanted to give kudos to them because just as a first impression, I walked away saying, wow, what a cool school and an amazingly diverse group of children that just, I think, was so representative of our city, and so kudos to them. I also want to make sure that we publicly thank Dontarius Caldwell, who's the 15-year-old Aiken student that was just doing what good people do, and he helped a lady cross the street. But that caught social media and the public, captured everyone's heart, because in the world of today, it's nice to see kindness, and even nicer to see it being done by our CPS students. So congratulations to Dontarius, and I sent a note to the superintendent, Carolyn, that maybe we could even recognize him here, because I think he is a role model for so many of our other students. And then lastly, I'm a huge fan of the Cincinnati Children's Theater. We are season ticket holders, and I love that they are just integrated so closely with Cincinnati Public Schools in a variety of ways. Our students often have the chance to go see their programs, et cetera. But what is noteworthy now is my daughter is particularly excited about the fact that Annie is coming up here. So I was going to hold this till maybe after and we could get her here, but just in hopes that this inspires you to go get tickets, because 14-year-old Walnut Hills student Diana Hutchinson is the lead. And so it's great that one of our CPS students is the lead, but I love also that she's the first African-American Annie to play there with the Cincinnati Children's Theater. And I think that's another thing that I love about that organization, is they're so in touch with what our community needs and wants and what should be. And I can't wait to see young Diana represent CPS and be a role model for so many little girls in her leading role in Annie. So kudos to her.
Thank you. Any additional kudos? Okay, thank you. Ms. Bates, please present any retirements.
Yes, we have several retirements from our certificated personnel. 2 teachers, Patricia Hutchinson and Dawn O. Smith, and from our civil service personnel, Kathy Bankemper. So we thank these professionals for their service to our children and wish them well in their retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Okay, we are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. Each speaker has 3 minutes to speak, and Mrs. Hughes will be our timekeeper. When the buzzer goes off, your 3 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. When your name is called, please come down to the lower podium to speak. We have 5 speakers. I'll call the first 3, and then the next 2. Jessica Wood, Liz Baker, Catherine Hubble. They both roll.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. And I do want to follow suit in terms of offering up kudos to my community, which is Hyde Park School. It's a fantastic school, fantastic parents. The teachers are wonderful. My family and I moved to Hyde Park about 10 years ago. I'm from Wyoming State, not Wyoming, Cincinnati. And we transitioned into the Hyde Park School in 2018. My daughter was at St. Ursula Villa, and I was a little, I had a little trepidation going into the public school system. I came from a very rural background, and so the larger class size was a little daunting, at least for me and my family, as we were making decisions on where to raise our daughter. My daughter's name is Ellie, Eleanor Wood. She's 8 years old. She's in the 2nd grade. She's in Miss Roberts' class. Currently, Ellie's classroom is housed at Eagles Bank. Let's talk about the experience that our children in 2nd grade have today on a daily basis. Her day starts off in the gym. All the children are lined up. They're encouraged to go to the restroom before they cross the street because the facilities are limited within the annex of the bank. Once they go through the announcements, the children line up again, and then they are escorted across Edwards Street on the corner of Hyde Park, where the Hyde Park School is between Edwards and Observatory, and go over to the bank. They're there in the morning. They have their normal morning routines, and then they all line back up, cross the street, go back to the main building, where they have lunch, they have recess, and then their special of the day. And then school is dismissed. I believe that the board's been made made aware of some of the challenges associated with the space in previous meetings from other Hyde Park school parents. I'll reiterate a few of them this evening. The physical separation disconnects our children and our students from the greater school community. The crossover takes time from instructional time. The students cross a busy Ohio truck route where there are semi-trucks and many cars trying to get through the intersection during rush hour. There is limited space within the annex. There's only 2 toilets for 75 children. Parents, in addition, are providing additional snacks to the children because they do have the last lunch hour of the day, which is at 12:25, obviously because we want to eliminate the number of times that we're crossing the street. Although the teachers, students, and principal centermen are making the best of the situation, we have a larger issue, and that is the safety of our children. This past Thursday, on February 27th, there was an incident at the crosswalk with a moving vehicle. Ms. Roberts' class was crossing the crosswalk when a vehicle failed to stop and proceeded towards the children. My daughter, Eleanor Wood, with her classmates, were in the middle of the street when this happened. Thursday was a very lucky day for all of us. The teachers present were successful in getting the attention of the driver and stopped the vehicle from hitting our children.
Ms. Wood,
Yeah,
your 3 minutes are up, but I want you to finish your thought.
yeah, I have two sentences.
Okay.
And I'll round
okay,
it out. I'll bring
great.
it home. Thank you. We are compromising the safety of our children and our teachers. We ask that the school board and CPS help us alleviate these safety concerns and quickly provide remediation of the daily danger that we are exposing our children and our school administration to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Baker?
Good evening. Thank you for letting me share again with you. I was here last month as well. I come to you tonight once again on behalf of the students, parents, and future students of Hyde Park School. Last Thursday, I too got this email from our principal regarding my daughter's 2nd grade class. Today, we had an incident when Miss Roberts' class was crossing over for the afternoon. When the class was about halfway through the crosswalk, a car turned left onto Edwards Road from Observatory. Fortunately, Mr. Williams was helping to cross us. He saw the car and was able to get the driver's attention to stop. We appreciate Mr. Williams for keeping our kids safe. As you can imagine, my heart raced as I read that email. I talked to a witness of the event and learned that the car came this close to hitting my daughter's class of 25 kids. I came to you last month and encouraged you that you have the opportunity to be proactive in keeping the kids safe at Hyde Park School by giving us the classroom space we need to not force our kids to cross a busy street twice a day. As of last Thursday, you were this close to being forced to make that decision reactively to a tragic situation. I recognize that some of you on the board experience an internal tension because many of the kids in our school come from families with privilege. I acknowledge that reality, but also challenge you that just because they come from families with privilege doesn't mean they deserve to be kept safe any less. I speak on behalf of the parents, many of whom are here tonight. We have a contingent. When I say we don't want to hoard your resources, we want you to be able to give to the schools that need it more. That's why when our school needed a new fence to keep our kids safe, we didn't come to you. Parents raised the money to get the new fence. When we needed a safe playground, parents raised 87% of the funding for it. We want to do all we can to free up your budget for schools with less access to resources. But we can't do this expansion project without you. We need you to come alongside us to keep our children safe, and we hope that your help now will free up future funds for other schools that need it. Thank you for your consideration and hopefully swift action in this dangerous situation. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Ms. Hubble?
Good evening. I don't think I'll use even a minute of my time. What I have to say is very brief, and you've heard some very compelling statements by other parents. My son, Lowell, who's also 8, was in Miss Roberts' class as well. What I wanted to bring was maybe a flavor of how the children are processing this. I am aware that one of his friends had a panic attack following the event. I'm aware that children were shaking and crying. I volunteer a lot to help with the crossover, and in the mornings we have a fairly good system, but in the afternoons parents are working, and this is a parent-led volunteer effort to cross our children. There are no police officers, you know this, I think. There are no crossing guards in the afternoon at 12:25. And I was there Friday and today, and I will say that in the 10 minutes that I'm there assisting with the crossing, I see 4 to 5 semis on that corner. I see people at rush hour that aren't looking at the height of a child, that are just trying to run that light and get to work on time. I leave with you more wisdom than I bring to the table about the possible solutions, but I think better enforcement, maybe working with the police department to have an officer, to have somebody present that's not a parent volunteer would be a great help. In terms of resources, it could be as easy as safety vests for all of the children. I just would like the solution to be implemented quickly. This was a really close call last week, and I think it's made us all reevaluate how we want this to play out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our final 2 speakers, Allison Goodman and Julie Sellers.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'm speaking on a similar topic, but from a different school. So I represent Pleasant Ridge Montessori. I'm the PTO president there now. I've been there for 7 years. I have a 6th grader, but I also have a 2-year-old. So we're in it for the long haul. We are overcrowded, and I realize, the bittersweetness of this problem is people are flocking to Cincinnati Public Schools, and you guys are doing a lot of things right. I know that there's no perfect school out there. This school has been really perfect for my daughter for her 7 years that she's been there, and I hope that that remains true as my son eventually gets there and goes through it. We, unlike some other schools, feel that our overcrowding problem cannot be solved simply with money for an expansion. We sit on a very small piece of property, and we really need some multifaceted solutions. And before any of those solutions, I think, can even come about, we really are asking for some engagement. Engagement with all of our communities. We, at our neighborhood schools, serve, I believe, 7 different neighborhoods. We have 3 main communities that make up our LSDMC, but we have outlying communities as well. And I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how this problem can be solved, but until we all sit down at the table with you and even with our neighboring schools and communities outside of our district boundaries for our building, I think a lot of people need to come to the table and try to work this out. So thank you for your time. I would love to engage with as many of you as possible in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Sellers.
Good evening, everyone. Leah is passing a flyer out to you that we received from the National AFL-CIO on the coronavirus, how to be vigilant, prepared, and don't panic. But if you look, there are some of the workers who are at increased risks are educators, and that could become a possibility of a problem, and I don't want to wait until there is a problem to know what the commitment of the district will be. And if you look on the back, it talks about priorities for workers and how to make sure that there is a good communication plan that everybody will be aware of. But one of the things that I would like to make sure is how will we make sure that schools will be sanitized to the level or degree that is necessary to prevent any spread of the virus if it happens to show up in one of our schools. And we also want to make sure that the supplies to sanitize schools, such as Lysol spray and bleach wipes or Clorox wipes, are provided by the district and that teachers are not having to buy gloves, bleach wipes, and Lysol spray. Because of those types of things in the classroom when kids are coughing and having, a lot of the respiratory problems, that impacts everybody at those desks every day. And then we want to make sure that every bathroom has hot water or warm water and soap, to make sure that there's soap and towels in the bathroom so that the kids, when they're being trained how to effectively wash their hands, that those supplies are necessary. And will the supplies that the custodial staffs need, will those all be provided to make sure that the whole building is able to be sanitized, not just classrooms? How will that work in the bathrooms, in the kitchen, or the lunchrooms? And a lot of times we want to know what percentage of students or what percentage of teachers who must be quarantined if they get sick before school closes. So is there going to be like a general guideline, or is it going to be a wait and see school by school? And then we also want to do, if the district could have a quick method to provide or advancement of sick leave to employees, because we have so many new teachers and new paras and new custodians and new employees that they haven't been in the district long enough to build up any sick time. And if they're going to be quarantined, can the district advance them some sick leave so that those families don't go without food? And so those are just the things that we want to make sure that come to the district's attention. But that sick leave advance, I think, is really important so that we don't have people who will be going without pay because they are at risk. If it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen within a school. I also wanted to say, Ryan, that Annie's mother is also a teacher in the district. And so, yes, and so I think that's great that we have the student and the mother are also both in the district. But I also want to bring up again, I am getting calls almost on a daily basis about the election day security for our students. And for the last 4 years, 3-4 years, we've been closing on election day, and we haven't had a primary that's going to be as busy as this primary. But this puts all children in the schools with voting polls at risk, because teachers have told me that they must almost act as if the students are on a lockdown mode, because the cafeterias are closed, the gyms are closed, they can't have recess, they sometimes have to have breakfast in their rooms. But the big thing is the strangers who are in the building who've never gone through any type of security, to make sure that they're not entering into the school building, because the buildings are unlocked on those days. I know that I have been here for the last 2 school meetings to talk about this. I hope that a decision is made soon, because people are calling with concerns about this. I know that we have more than enough hours based on the state for required school to cover this. I think we actually go to school about 20-something days more than what the state requires by hours. And I've heard that it's because the timing for this was too late to close, but yet when we have a snow day, they sometimes close just an hour before prior to what the bus route pickups are. So I think, I mean, that's done anytime there's a calamity day. I think that giving a few weeks' notice is more than enough time for people to make arrangements. But I just think that for civic reasons, I think it's great that our buildings are used for elections. And I think that it's a really important process, but I also think that we want to make sure that we are making sure that all of our students in all of those, I think there's 20 locations that have polling places, that is a day that we should, honor and make sure that our students are safe and not take any chances. The parking lots, the teachers are already being told to park off campus. On the street, and some of them don't feel that they want to park based on the neighborhood off on the street, or there isn't close parking with what they have to carry. And so I know that this is something that we should talk about. Maybe we can even, I don't know, have some kind of a thing like we did with the backpacks, where the kids have work to do that would be online, or they would send some work home for the kids to do that might be related to election day coverage. So, but anyway, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. And periodically, the board likes to kind of inform people in the audience. As you know, we ask people, we give people 3 minutes, and we realize that sometimes when you're expressing your opinion, you need more time, and we try to be considerate. Ms. Sellers, as the president of the Federation of Teachers, by contractual arrangement, the 3-minute limit is waived. So that's why you heard the timer go off and she was speaking. So we like to do that periodically to inform our public so that it doesn't seem so lopsided. So thank you for your patience. Okay. All right. We're going to move on. Superintendent Mitchell, please introduce this evening's presentation.
Gladly. This evening, I would like to present Shauna Murphy, our Assistant Superintendent over Secondary Education. This is a continuation of our work as it is related to the strategic plan. So each board meeting, we want to bring before you members of our team who are implementing the strategic plan. So we are launching a series related to student-centered decision-making called Beyond the Tassel as we enter into this second half of the year, actually we're more than entered into it, looking toward graduation. Everything that we do pre-K through 12th grade is really about what happens to our young people once they graduate, and if they have the skills to be able to go into the world of work, go into the military, go off to school to make a decent living for themselves and their families. So tonight we have 2 short presentations that are captured in this series Beyond the Tassel, beginning with building bridges to Destination Cincinnati and cybersecurity, and we have a partner with us, and so we're very excited to offer this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Mitchell. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So just a short time ago, the Office of Secondary Education had an opportunity to come before you to talk about our dreams about Beyond the Tassel, and we shared with you our plans to have a career employment fair coming up very quickly. And then we also had a nice presentation featuring some students from Hughes STEM and the partnership with TriHealth. So tonight, we'll talk to you a little bit, ask you and invite you on this journey with us, building bridges to a destination district, where we talk to you a little bit about plans we currently have and where those plans will lead us just in a short period of time. And then we'll also have a presentation from our career-based learning manager and team from Belcan, which is hosted at Taft IT High School. Brittany.
Thank you. We're excited to be in front of you today. I'm Brittany Cousins, Career-Based Learning Manager, and I'm joined here by...
Hi, good evening. My name is Travis Raleigh. I'm an employment specialist with the career-based learning team.
Michael Turner, Career and Technical Education Manager.
And as Assistant Superintendent Murphy said, we're here to talk about our future plans as it relates to building bridges to our destination district. So currently here as the career team, we see ourselves as bridge builders as we work to prepare our students for life post-graduation. But ultimately, we play a role in the larger ecosystem in our city. We want our city to be viewed and our graduates to be viewed a part of the economic vitality as well as the talent development and retention of our city.
And so thinking about why this work matters for our students, just this past year, the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber, in partnership with the University of Cincinnati, released the most recent Jobs Outlook Report 2028. And in that report, they stated that the self-sufficiency standard for one adult and one child is roughly $41,000 a year. And so when we think about projected job growth and the current trends in our region, the top 25 fastest growing jobs, of those 25, there are currently 7 that meet or exceed that threshold. Now the good news is, in those 7 job sectors, we have programming currently in place that's working towards guiding students to careers in those fields, some of which we'll talk about here briefly with our guests tonight. But what that means for our students, we need to make sure that we're preparing them to attain employment in those sectors. When we look ahead to the fastest growing jobs over the next 10 years, the reality is most of those jobs in our region are not going to require your traditional 4-year post-high school college education. Most of those jobs that are going to be created will require only a high school degree and or some post-secondary training. And so what that means for our current class of 2020, when we look at our 3E data for the last second quarter, we had 331 students that elected some form of intention to go into employment. Additionally, we had 266 students that are currently undecided. So currently, we have about 600 students. We need to make sure we're building those bridges to meaningful work post-graduation.
So when looking ahead, we have identified 3 main aims or goals that we would like to achieve. The first is that CPS will produce graduates that have the skill sets necessary to not only obtain, but retain gainful employment in the most in-demand sectors in our region. Secondly, we want all of our students who have identified employment post-graduation will be matched with an employer partner that is fit and ready to hire them upon graduation. And lastly, we will increase our employer partner network to really bring in employers that are committed to hiring CPS graduates at a self-sustaining wage. So currently, we have a few investments in this area already. When we look at our budget, we have over $10.7 million invested in workforce readiness programming across the district. It comes from a variety of funding sources, including federal funds and state funds that really support our career tech curriculum as well as our teachers. But we also have opportunities for our resources to be allocated for exploration, exposure, and readiness, and also the attainment of jobs. When we think about our physical assets, we have 6 buildings currently outfitted to support this work. Each facility is catered toward a particular career pathway. We have at Dater High School an industrial-sized kitchen that students can learn a variety of strategies and techniques in the culinary arts space, including pastry arts. At Woodward Career Tech, our flagship career tech school, students have an opportunity to learn advanced manufacturing, including welding and construction. We have a variety of bays where students can actually do hands-on activities. Our students dig deep at Gamble, where they get to explore agriculture. And our students at Taft Information and Technology High School get a chance to explore many different careers, one of which we'll hear from today.
So one of the things that we spend a lot of time looking at is where do we have the cross-section, the intersection of what we do in our district, but also what our neighboring district, the Oaks, do, because it is a very competitive market. And so one of the things that we're closely looking at is what is the congruency and what are the differences between what we offer and what the Oaks offer. For example, we have several agricultural programs. The Oaks really do not have those sorts of programs. They have cosmetology, we don't. The Ohio Department of Education has actually said cosmetology is one of those careers that is not falling in that threshold of a living wage. And so we're closely looking at that because of the very competitive nature of what exists in this whole world that we're working on. One of the things we have to balance is we have facilities, and so are those facilities up to date? And so, for example, advanced manufacturing changes very quickly. What advanced manufacturing looked at facilities-wise several years ago now may be out of date. So we're looking at buying equipment for next school year that will bring us up to date in advanced manufacturing. We also know that when we make a comparative analysis of us versus the Oaks, we're at about 85 to 90% congruency, and we're looking at the differences to see what makes sense for us to do compared to maybe what we're not doing. One of the areas that we know that is in demand, but we don't have the facilities for that, is automotive. And so we're looking at how can we be creative to offer an automotive program, even though we may be lacking in that area of facility. So the opportunities are endless. We really do want to offer things that make sense, things that our students are definitely interested in, but also will lead them to a career, even if college is what they go to next to get to that career. So it's really interesting to compare everything and look at that small section of that Venn diagram where everything intersects.
So in thinking about our aims and what we will need to accomplish that bold vision, to making sure that we have a system in place that's connecting students to employers of right fit, where they can obtain that self-sustaining wage, there are really kind of three bodies of work that we need to engage in. And the first piece of that is really taking a look at research best practices and models of success. One recommendation would be to start with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This past year, they awarded 5 cities these career readiness lab grants. And these are cities that are doing some really innovative things with their local business community. It's really it models the partnership between education and business. One recommendation would be to really go take a field trip and see what's working, boots on the ground perspective. To case studies of success, Upskill Houston and DT Energy in Detroit, Michigan. One recommendation our team really would be to send some senior leaders to take a look and see what those communities are doing well. Additionally, the 2017 World's Most Competitive Cities Report. In 2017, our neighbors to the north in Columbus were identified as being the most competitive city in a few key industries. I would really recommend that we take a look at what our folks and our friends in Columbus are doing, what learnings we can bring back. And then once we identify which job sectors we really want to be intentional about targeting, there are some cities internationally. Mr. Turner mentioned automotive, for example. There are some models internationally, specifically Germany, for example, Berlin, where international cities that are very competitive have a deep partnership with the local educational landscape.
So when we look at growth and expansion, we also have to expand our capacity to do this work so that we may equitably serve all of our students. Currently, we have 4 district employees dedicated to serving our students across our 16-school footprint. Some schools have personnel in the building that works in that capacity. When we look at the larger picture, we have 4 representatives. We know that that's not enough to be able to broker and foster the relationships that we need to be sustained. So we are looking to add or request a career specialist in every high school. Those career specialists will be able to not only work intently with our students as they progress to that next stage, but also really cater to the partnerships that need to be paid attention to in order for this work to grow. In addition, we know that we have to expand our infrastructure. So currently, we are envisioning our own employment center. This employment center will be an all-encompassing space where students can not only really work through their core curriculum that they need for graduation, but really prepare for that next stage. So we're envisioning a one-stop career-oriented preparation center where students can access their birth certificates, their social security cards, things that we know that they need to be successful and enter into work, to be eligible for work. We want those services co-located in the building to prevent some of the barriers. In addition, we know that our social services agencies really help us throughout the district, and we want to bring those career readiness services to our students. We also want to engage our employers in a different way, so we want them to become sponsors and really outfit our classroom environments to simulate real-world environments. So, for example, as students engage and learn about financial services, we can have a bank inside of this center where students can do their own transactions, as well as learn the financial sector, which was one of the 10 in-demand jobs. In addition, we want to ensure that our students have one-on-one career advising, so that will be provided in this space as well. We know that none of this work is done in a vacuum or in isolation, so we really work hard to ensure that our employment partner network is intact and is strong. These are our partners that have taken the ride with us since the really insurgence and work to build this partnership up. We have many different employers from the industries outlined here, and all of them really bring to life some key characteristics we want to duplicate with additional employer partners that would join the network. All of these partners are co-creators and co-collaborators in this space. They bring us into their world and we bring them into ours. They have designated staff to be able to do this. They also have invested time and energy to create buy-ins, not at the senior VP level, but also on the entry level where our students will be able to engage with the supervisors. They've also really worked hard to help with the coaching and mentoring necessary for successful transition, not only to work, but in life. And they all have committed to providing employment for our students post-graduation. And those are the characteristics that we're seeking in additional employers to join. We believe that if we follow the blueprint that we outline above, we can really move students beyond the tassel into the world of work to really put the stake in the ground as we are a district of destination and really solidify ourselves as a vital part of the ecosystem of our city's vitality. Thank you.
Maybe we will pause to see if there's any questions about this first section before we move to our real-life partner, Belcan.
Thank you. Board members, Mr. Messer.
Thank you. You're probably going to guess that I'm going to say I love this. I mean, we could talk about this every meeting. I'd be thrilled. Because, you know, just look at my children. I'm fully suspecting maybe half of them won't go to college, looking at the trends today and looking at the jobs, and I'm perfectly okay with that. And I hope, as CPS students, they're going to have opportunities like the ones you're laying out here that may start to guide them to a career, and then maybe some additional training beyond that to specialize. And I think what you're showing here is a deliberate focus to job opportunities that are viable, that have a way for them to make a living wage, et cetera. So thank you for that. You know, I think I called it out at a previous meeting, the phlebotomy program, just using that as an example. It is so great because, yes, they're going through the curriculum, and I got to meet with some of the teachers who talk about just, she was brought in to just teach them how to be a good employee. Forget about being a phlebotomist, how to just be a good employee. And I loved hearing all of that piece. Again, I think that's worthy of our community hearing even more about. But I think that has to be more of our model versus another group that I met last year in a different school where their experience was, oh, well, we we went and we saw this, and then they came back. So it really, you know, what I hear, this is very much more towards that very specific, guided, certificated when possible. And I just want to thank you for this work, because I think, you know, that number that of the people who want to go to college may not necessarily be that group that is today, or maybe it may not be the group that should. And I think it's great that you're creating these very viable opportunities for all our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers?
You can go, Eden. You can go.
Ms. Bowers?
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought she was first. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your partnership. I am really excited to hear about the comparison between the Great Oaks and what we're doing in CPS. Quite often, my suburban counterparts are always talking about not knowing that we are doing all the vocational career things, and I just like to say I appreciate that comparison and ongoing collaboration and expansion. I would like for us to, and I've said this before, sell this more to our community so that people will know that we have this beautiful, forward-thinking, in effect, imaginary, creative, innovative thing going on in CPS, because I don't think everybody knows that we have all of these great partnerships and we're on the move like this in the community. So thank you for that.
We do have a handout that disseminates the differences and the similarities between CPS and the Great Oaks that we could leave with you tonight.
Perfect.
And then secondly, absolutely, we are working with the Office of Communication and Engagement on our marketing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bolton?
Yes, as I think my board members know, and certainly the superintendent knows, I think this is very huge and very supportive of this. I would say, first of all, I hope we can get a hard copy of your presentation. I think would be helpful. There's some good data in it. I'll also remind people that at the end of last year, the Oaks had 300 seats empty. So we are the future, I think, and well, hopefully the Oaks will be part of the future too, but I expect us to be big dog on this effort of career pathways. I really do. The point that Ms. Bowers made is absolutely true, that we are not finding a way to sell this or make people aware of this, or even finding a way to really scale it like you all need it, because it is staffing, it is funding, it is facilities that are all needed. And I still maintain that the 16 or so, or whatever how numbers of the pathways, one of the ways to present it to the community is, and I know Mr. Turner's been looking at this too as well, is that each one of our high schools ought to be a home campus, at least, and that kids could be able to reconsider, and I know Mr. Morosky's talked about this, reconsider their placement at a particular high school, not just do it in 7th grade, but again prior to that 10th grade or thereabouts. But also with distance learning, there's an opportunity, and with what the superintendent has a number of times said, having an actual training center in Cincinnati Public is an important facility piece. I wonder too, part of the staffing problem, I think, is that we probably need to find people that may be interested in doing this, but then it costs a significant amount of time and money to get them the credentials that they need, if I understand it. It might be something that is worth budgeting in order to improve the number and the placement of a greater number of career tech people. Because I know we do it, pay for some Montessori or we pay for some other stuff. I think this is as big as an important and equity issue as doing that. So I appreciate that. So thanks for your work, and I expect it to accelerate and get bigger and bigger.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy?
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to say that thank you so much for the presentation. And I thought in particular the opening around grounding this in what's happening in our economy and being strategic around where the real opportunities through the next 10, 20 years are going to be, I found that very compelling. And I want to say thank you.
Okay. Once again, thank you all so much for the presentation. We look forward to hearing more in the near future. Thank you.
And now we have this group.
So as we talked about previously, this work helps to connect the students in the employee category as they transition out of CPS and into the world of work. And today we have the opportunity to do a deep dive in the Cyber Academy program. Before we begin, I think it's important to explain why this work matters. So there's a video that we would like to show that pretty much outlines the demand as well as how we're planning to meet it.
As online technologies continue to evolve and cyber criminals become more sophisticated in their methods and approaches, cyber...
It's the technology. Let's try it again.
Cyber attack.
What the video outlines, I'll keep going, is that information technology is one of the most in-demand sectors that we have, not only in our region, but in our world. And more specifically, cybersecurity is an area of focus as we prepare our young people to enter into the world of work. And to really talk through why this work matters here, we have some wonderful partners here to explain.
Try it again.
So we have a wonderful partnership with Belkin, and we have some representatives that were very informational and very instrumental in bringing this partnership here to the district. So I would like to bring Mr. Terry Williams, as well as Mr. Matthew King and Mr. Stephen Wanamaker to explain the origin of the program, as well as why they have chosen to invest their time, their resources, and their energy into this work.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, the first thing I want to do is to thank you for allowing us to invest in the future of your students. This is really important to Belcan. And we've been involved in a lot of STEM programs previously, but one of the issues that we've had is that, typically, that involved just writing a check. And so this time we thought we would do it a little bit different in that, we would actually start a program. Of course, we would fund the program, but at the same time, we would actually participate in how the students actually evolve through the program. And if you're not familiar, and by the way, I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. I'm Terry Williams. I'm the CIO and Chief Technology Officer for Belcan. Belcan is a global aerospace engineering company. Within my organization, I have responsibility for all of our government sectors, as well as our commercial IT and engineering sectors. So I have about, like I said, my staff is global. This initiative is important to me specifically because I'm always recruiting. And the biggest issue that I have in this industry is finding talent. And so, one of the things that you'll see on the video, if you ever get a chance to watch it, is that there are over 1 million openings in the cybersecurity space. And they are struggling to actually find talent to fill those openings. And this is not just in the US, this is a global issue. So the opportunity is here and presents itself to actually invest in students and give them the opportunity to accelerate their learning process coming out of high school. When Steve and I, and there's nothing magical about how this program started. It actually started with Steve and I having a casual conversation about how can we invest in the Cincinnati area and how can we keep talent in the Cincinnati area and how can we position students to come out of high school and immediately be employable. If you can imagine the opportunity for students to go through this program, come out of high school, and immediately earn between $50,000 and $70,000 a year. That's really unheard of for students coming out of high school. And the reason why the salaries are so high is because there is a global shortage. So, with that said, one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to, of course, continue to invest in this program, but I think that there's opportunities to actually even accelerate it faster. The end state, what we want to see is that we want to see employers from all over the nation coming to this area, coming to Cincinnati Public Schools, and waiting in line to recruit students. I know that may sound far-fetched, but what I'm telling you is that I do the same thing when I know that there are talented people in certain areas where I can recruit. So this isn't a far-fetched idea. I think that we can make this happen. Like I said, we're going to continue to invest in this program. We have some very innovative ideas that we're going to implement within the next 3 or 4 months that I think will even help accelerate the student learning process. And the key thing is that to make it fun for the students, because this is not an easy area to learn. So we want to make sure that we get as many students, through this program as possible. So that is Belcan's commitment. Like I said, we're going to provide internships. I think we had a couple interns last summer. We're looking to significantly increase that this year. So the students that came on site, I think that they walked away with a greater understanding of what it actually takes to succeed in a real-time, corporate environment. We did not only taught them, the technical aspects, but we taught them, how to interact with people, which is key in a corporate environment, as well as, just, doing things like the normal things, how do you learn, how do you accelerate, how do you, get the things you need, ask for the things that you need to be able to learn and succeed in a corporate environment. So, any questions?
We may have questions when the presentation is done, so please stand by.
Okay.
I'm sure we will have questions and comments.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and I'd first like to thank just Laura Mitchell, as well as Eve Bolton and Sarah Trimble Oliver for their vision and understanding the great technology talent gap in our region. And not just talking about it, but being forward-thinking and strategic and creating a program which provides technology talent to companies where the kids, when they graduate, can make higher salaries, which is just fantastic. There's currently 4,000 open jobs in the greater Cincinnati area. We're not talking about working at a fast food restaurant. We're talking about cybersecurity, big data, analytics, coding. We're talking about jobs that pay $60,000 to $200,000 a year. And the reason why there's a talent gap is because most schools are not addressing the challenge of educating people to fill the needs. And what I love about Cincinnati Public Schools and their vision is that they are actually being very entrepreneurial and disrupting education to actually provide jobs where companies will hire them. And if we are going to transform our city and be a true economic catalyst, we need to continue to work with more companies like Belcan, Procter & Gamble, Kroger, Great American Insurance that understand the jobs that they're hiring for, and we need to train our students to fill them. It's kind of like if you're going to a restaurant. If you're hungry and if you want Italian, that guy better serve you Italian food. That being said, if we, in the 21st century, two things will happen. Number one, either we provide the talent which companies are going to desperately need, and if we do that, our region will be transformed because companies will not only stay here, they will move here. They will stay here and they will move here because if we are not, because companies need employees. And if they can't find employees that are educated in big data, the cloud, cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, if they can find that workforce here, our companies will stay, and they'll not only stay, companies will come. On the other side, if we are not forward-thinking and do not train students in the programs we're discussing, companies will leave. So what you're doing today, I commend you, being leaders of vision, leaders of action, not just talking about it, but you're providing opportunities for the kids, not only today, but in the future, to actually have jobs that make a difference. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all. When we drill down to the program components and what makes this program successful, all of our employment pipeline programs have three major components. The first is industry-specific training, which is provided by either a post-secondary institution, supplemented from our career tech training, or can be provided by the company themselves. We also have workforce readiness training, that is the soft skills component. And last but not least, they either have a work-based learning, employment opportunity, an internship that ultimately leads to full-time employment. So I have here Mr. Philip Jabert. He's our other employment specialist that will speak specifically to the Belkin partnership.
Thank you, Brittany. So starting with the industry-specific training, we have two different credentials that the students can obtain throughout their time in the cybersecurity program. So we have cybersecurity training within Security Plus, which is a certification. And then we also have Certified Ethical Hacker, which is a training certification that the students can obtain thanks to Belkin through the CyberStart learning platform they have provided to TAF. Second is our workforce readiness training. So we have me as the employment specialist, that I'm the liaison between the school, the district, and Belkin partners in order to instruct and co-create programming, scheduling, visits, and all those things entailed within the Belkin program. Also, as well, we have a Belkin Day in the Life workshop in which we just had recently, where we bring students on the Belkin campus and they learn full immersion within all the different cybersecurity jobs that are offered within Belkin. They also, as well, got a tour of the facility and kind of got some revision, some revamp on their cybersecurity training as well. We are also adding a mentoring component for next year as well for the students to have a mentor as they transition to full-time employment after their training. For us as employment, we have the summer internships, which students complete their junior year after they apply for Belkin. Once they complete that application, they will be accepted and they work full-time during the summer, part-time, full-time, depending on their schedule. And they are also paid as well. That will transition to full-time employment once they finish their certification and graduate as well.
Thank you. So we're gonna kind of advance through the rest of the slides, but you'll be sure to get the rest of the presentation. We have a program-specific timeline that really highlights what Mr. Jabert shared before. All students apply for the internship program, and then as they matriculate through the grade levels, they will be matched to full-time employment. Our inaugural class of 26 juniors are currently still learning and developing in the course. And then we have another cohort of 24 that are currently sophomores. As mentioned, the Day in the Life workshop, students had an opportunity to see a lot of careers and do some hands-on activities, as well as take a tour. And then Mr. O'Shea Coley and Christian Rudolph were our two students who participated in this year's summer internship. Looking ahead, as alluded to earlier, we plan to continue to improve as our district focuses on quality improvement. The career-based learning team really prioritizes that as well. So we're working with the team and our employment partner to do so. With the help of Sarah Trimble Oliver, we are building out this mentorship component, and we are appreciative of her help in that regard, increasing the number of students that are in the internship opportunities. And we know that a critical piece to this work to move students along, especially since it's 3 years, we want to make sure that our families are engaged in that process and there to celebrate their students at the finish line.
Great. Wonderful presentation. So we'll open it up for questions and comments. Ms. Bowers and then Mr. Lindy.
Again, thank you. This is an extraordinary opportunity for our students. I am very excited, and I look forward to getting more information on the number of students that are actually participating, the number of students that actually stay with the program from the beginning of the 10th grade and through fruition at the end, and those getting connected. And then I'm interested in seeing how to expand this. Once I know those big numbers are going to come through at TAF, we can expand it for other opportunities throughout the district. So thank you for your partnership. This is exciting.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, and I share Ms. Bowers', I think, enthusiasm for the program, and I love seeing high school students with choices about what career path they want to follow, and this looks like an incredibly powerful choice for kids. I think that you may have shared this, and if you did, I apologize, but wanted to ask, of the first class that's come through the program, how many of them are now working full-time for Belcan?
So students in the program are currently juniors, so they haven't quite
So
made it to that
okay,
step. We have internships currently. We had 2 students participate in the pilot, and more students will go through the internship opportunity, and then next year we'll be able to provide that data on employment.
Great, and I apologize if you said that earlier, so thanks.
Okay, Mr. Messer, followed by Ms. Bolton, followed by Ms. Bates.
Thank you. It's hard not to be excited when you hear the number 1 million jobs going unfilled. And then hearing talk about potential of having employers stalking our school district to see who they could get first, which would be great. I like that competitiveness. And then probably the thing I like the most, the 2 words, disrupt education.
Yes.
I think that was a really powerful thing because I think it speaks to what we're trying to do here. Because with testing requirements, we're constantly fighting with the state to do things that are disruptive, and I think it's hard to be first and hard to be out front. But I think this is a model to explain why education does need to change. And I think lastly, it's great to have companies that encourage their staff to go volunteer and mentor students. We need that. It's great to have employers who donate extra office furniture or other supplies. We need that. But it is unique to have employers actually come and participate and be a part of creating brighter futures for our students. And I think that's to be commended. And I think I've envisioned like the first company to make the CPS Employer Hall of Fame for having hired 100 CPS students or something like that. Because I think we have to recognize how important that is and then reward that publicly, because people in our community want to hear this. This is a story that sings with taxpayers. You can watch social media. People are talking about how do we get kids ready. College may not be for everybody, et cetera. This is what people, I think, get excited about. And so thank you, Belcan, for stepping up and being a partner with CPS.
Thank you. Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, of course, I want to commend Mr. Williams and Mr. Wanamaker, who brought this to the district. That kind of support and faith is so appreciated by all of us. I would also say that I know Mr. Messer is very interested in the health piece, and we've talked about it. Certainly the health piece and the IT and even the green and ag, if you will, those seem to be 3 of the biggest involvements in the career piece, where, ag is the #1 industry in the state of Ohio. IT, you've heard it witnessed here, the need to have those jobs filled. And health, of course, as we are all experiencing, and know we've already made a big investment in a number of our schools regarding health programs. But I would hope that, and I know it's hard to put this kind of program together, but to Ms. Bauer's point, I think it is time to scale this effort in a way that it becomes available to more and more students. I know we talked about this as in the beginning of this, but it's just like our zoo program, where we have something that is this exciting, I think, is, and a person that just said we need home campuses, but I did say distance learning too. I just think that this is something that should be made available to even a larger number of our students. And I think the opportunity is phenomenal. But we can't do this alone. And you always hear me say bad things about the state of Ohio, but one thing good that they've done recently is start to make this a part of graduation requirements and emphasize in the name of equity serving all our kids. So, and we can't do it without these guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bates.
Yes, and thank you very much. This is an awesome program. But I kind of want to take it a step further. I mean, you're an engineering firm, and we should be also supporting our students so that if they want to proceed in that area, because I'm sure you're going to need engineers to take your places eventually, but do we have the AP courses at Taft to support children who want to move on into the field of engineering, calculus, AP, A and B, and the science courses?
There are pre-engineering classes available for students, not only at Taft, I believe also at Aiken. Woodward has a manufacturing and engineering, pre-engineering route as well.
I want to add something to that. I didn't see aerospace engineering on the list, but I think that there's also a shortage in that area. In fact, we do a lot of recruiting in India right now. So we have thousands of aerospace engineers in India. We would like to keep that work here, but aerospace engineering is just not a career path that a lot of students are choosing. So I would love to see something in the school system that gives them a start. And of course, we're actually willing to support that program also.
Wow. Thank you. And I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said ever since when I came on this board and began to hear about Belcan and what you were bringing as a partner to our district. I was very excited. And so again, thank you for what you do for our students. We look forward to the program growing and the partnership growing and coming back and sharing that information with us. And also, the PowerPoints, you can send it to us electronically. Those of us who wanted hard copy can print it, but electronic, you send it to the board staff and we'll get it. And then Ms. Bolton, you look nice in blue jacket. That was nice. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're now at our board matters agenda, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hoying to come up to the podium. As you all know, we've been in negotiations with the city around the tax abatement, the proposed tax abatement agreement. So Mr. Hoying is going to sort of give us, summarize where we are to date. And I'm sure board members will have questions and comments, but I think our goal for this evening is to really kind of give him recommendations for how to move forward. So, Mr. Hoying.
Yeah, thank you. We have at this point had a chance to review the draft agreement that the city's law department put together. I'm pleased to report that the agreement is very much in line with what the board had requested in terms of the terms and the terms of the agreement. Specifically, just to go through a few of those, the term of this agreement is proposed to be much shorter than the term of the first 1999 agreement, which was a 20-year term. That was one of the board's priorities. We need some direction. The city council has essentially passed an agreement that would terminate in a range between December 31, 2025 and December 31, 2027. So if the board is inclined for a shorter term, again, City Council has approved a term that would end on December 31, 2025. If the board is inclined for a longer term, that could go as long as 2027. And I understand from the city's administration that there's no real preference within that. That's up to the Board of Education, from what I can tell. Additionally, there's a lot of positive about the pilot that has been agreed to by the city and the school district, and the city has this agreement again confirms that that'll be a 33% pilot on all types of abatements. TIFs, CRAs are the primary tools that have been used by the city, and again, this agreement will ensure a 33% TIF, 33% pilot on all those tax abatements. We will work with the city to ensure that the same types of agreements that received pilots during under the 99 agreement will continue to receive pilots going forward, but the city has again confirmed to us that programmatically they don't intend to change the types of abatements they're offering. And then one of the other things that the board insisted upon was that there be an annual review of tax abatements, and that the district is receiving those incentives, and of course that's included in the agreement as well. In addition, the city proposes a third-party report to be generated by essentially a mutually agreeable consultant. We think that's fine. What the actual consultant will consider, the current agreement, or the proposed agreement, would have that expert looking at the impact of state foundation payments. That's something that the board thought, I think, was not germane. But again, this annual review process is something we insisted on, and of course that's included. So overall, we need some direction on the term. I need some direction from the board on, your thoughts on this third-party review. But other than that, it looks very good, and again, very consistent with the board's goals in, renewing this agreement. So happy to take your questions, and then again, look for some direction, especially on the term.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Open up to comments or questions from the board. Mr. Messer?
Yeah, one thing as it relates to the annual review, what I remember us discussing is there would be an annual review, and then there would be some language that there would designate a group, like whoever that group would be, and that if they choose to employ an outside party, they could, but it wasn't necessarily a requirement. This sounds a little bit more specific, and so I'm just expressing that, was that something that they suggested, that it's an audit with a required outside, and then who convenes them? Is it spelled out specifically? Is it the district administration along with, and is there an audit committee or a review committee laid out? I'm curious about that piece.
So in Section E, there is essentially two parts of that. One is the annual review audit meeting that's included. In addition to that, again, yes, if the parties choose, and this requires the agreement, the mutual agreement of both the city and the board to retain an outside third party to review, and I gather what the city's proposing here is that would review essentially what that make-whole percentage should be. And so, there's still language in here already that makes that, that requires our agreement to that as well. For example, it's paid, the cost for this third-party expert would be split by the board and the city, and requires the board's approval in order to go forward. So, it is what the city's language that they drafted up, but I think it's pretty consistent with as you just described. Annual audit meeting, and then a third party with the agreement of both parties.
Go ahead.
So then I think, definitely more in the review versus audit language. And then let's say and I don't believe it should include state funding. I think we're probably all in agreement of that. And just so I'm clear, so let's say they do that review, and they say, well, it looks like the amount should have been 31%, or if it should be 35%, then is it that we go backwards and look, or is it just a go forward amount, and is that explicitly called out?
It is explicit, and we will make sure that it is absolutely explicit, but to read from the city's proposed section E3, it says, for clarity, nothing in this part is intended to alter the agreed compensation set forth in the agreement. So to translate, nothing in what a third-party expert would look at would change the 33% number that the district, that the board negotiated in this term. I think I anticipate that if an expert came up with a dramatically different number, that would be the make-whole number, either higher or lower, that would be used by either party in negotiations in the future. But nothing would change over the term of this agreement. Is that clear?
Yeah, and I think that's a good clarification, because I don't think I walked away from reading that it was no change until the end of the agreement, if there were, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Bates?
Yeah, I'm kind of in favor of going for the longer term of the agreement, either 6 or 7 years, especially since when we, look back at how long it took to negotiate this. It took about 1.5 years. And so we're going to be gearing up if we only have the shorter agreement in another 2 years starting all over again. So I would be in favor of maybe going with the 7-year instead of the 5 or 6 year. And as far as the review, I think that's fine that we don't change or include language to change the 33%. We may be 31% 1 year and 35% another year and 33. I think we'll see that trend as we did with the last agreement, that, hopefully that the effort to make us whole will, over the 6 or 7 year period, even out. But to have the expectation that 33% is going to work on the nose every year, that's probably not going to happen.
Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Bolton?
Just quickly, I wouldn't want to go to this as far as the 7, but because of the 5-year plan piece, but your point is well taken. We don't want to be doing this every other year, but I could live with 6, I guess. But this is when it gets signed, moving forward. This pertains to whatever CRAs or whatever. So this has nothing to do with moving back. This is, but is it waiting for the signature to the end of the drafting of it, the agreement, or?
So that's right. It's for a new term. So the term of the old agreement ended on December 31st, 2019. We have advised the city that our review of this agreement should not hold up any projects that may be in progress, and that if there are projects that need immediate attention, to bring those to our attention, and we would bring those to your attention, and provided, the deal that was being offered was consistent with this agreement, i.e. a 33% pilot, we would move those forward. But we wanted to make sure that the global agreement represents the district's interests and the board's interests over the full term. So that's, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I think what I'm hearing is some consensus. We haven't heard from all board members, but I think we're probably in a similar place, with the exception maybe of the term. And so it would be great, I think, if people could express perhaps their opinion about whether it should be short-term, long-term. So I'll start. I kind of prefer the short-term just for the reasons that Ms. Bolton described, that it would help us align with the 5-year forecast. So that's kind of where I am.
I'm in agreement to the 5-year.
Okay. Ms. Messer, any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned, but I personally think the longer is better, just because, I mean, we better start next one pretty quickly, the way this one went. We should probably get started on the next term, but I would definitely be fine with 5, but I think the longer is better, in my opinion.
Okay. And Mr. Lindy stepped out, so we can't get his opinion at this moment, but we will. So,
How about if we compromise on 6?
Oh, yeah.
compromise on, well, it is 6. I mean, the term is probably 6 years, right?
5
Isn't it? No, it was actually, the way it's written, it
the
looks
way it's
like
written,
6
it'd
to
be
8, or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that.
they
So
didn't
the
really-
shorter of that, it really is 6
6,
years.
Yeah.
So I think, would
I
you be
think they
comfortable
already
with that?
compromised for us.
I think Ms. Bates said she would be comfortable with that.
With 6?
And-
6.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things we all, I think, agree on is that, you know, number one, we didn't want to belabor this, but also we wanted it to be a win-win situation. I think what we learned and what we're expressing is the desire to get this done, and it's very few differences of opinion on that. So, Mr. Lindy, while you were gone, we just had a brief discussion about, we think we're in agreement for the most part, except there was an expression about whether we should go short-term or long-term, but I think Ms. Bates, who expressed that, was feeling like the shorter end of that was okay, because it really is 6 years. So, you know.
Yeah, I think it sounds great. I have no strong opinion on term length
Okay.
and agree with
All
everything
right.
else he said.
So if we're all comfortable with letting Mr. Hoing move forward on that, I think it's a done deal. We in turn got what we wanted. The board should be proud of holding to and standing for what we wanted, and I think the city also benefits from this, from us. And so move
Great.
forward.
We will move forward. We will be in touch with the city. Hopefully, barring any significant objections, we'll have an agreement. We'll confirm, you know, your agreement with the final language at the next board meeting.
Thank you. Great. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the LSDMC student voting.
That's me.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes, I'm bringing this back before the board from SAC has already reviewed it and sent it back. And I think the request last meeting was for me to bring language around the current language in the LSDMC regarding student voting. So the current language reads 2, but not more than 3 students from grades 7 through 12 to be selected by the student body or designated by the student council. Student representatives are non-voting members. I think that there was a lot of discussion. We had a survey completed. Our superintendent, Murphy completed the survey among students who were interested in voting. And we had discussed that it was important we thought it was important for students to vote. She did the survey. The information came back. So the recommendation is that there's an amendment to policy 9142, allowing a block vote of student representation. So that's what we're bringing back to SAC is presenting back to the board for approval.
Questions, Ms. Bolton?
With the change in the policy regarding LSDMC, then it would also require adding whatever that text is to the LSDMC guidebook or what have you.
Right.
And I think that would be great. I'm not sure what the text of.
The text actually reads the same number of students, but it says regardless of the number of students, 2 or 3 serving on the school LSDMC, the student representative LSDMC vote counts as a block vote of 1. And then it said it is recommended but not remain a school decision that while all students in grades 7 through 12 vote for their LSDMC representative, it is preferred that only one upper class, 10 through 12 student, be eligible to serve as a representative on the LSDMC. This is the recommended change in language for the LSDMC bylaws.
Ms. Bates and then Ms. Bolton. Ms. Bolton, did you have a follow-up to that
Yeah,
real
I just
quick?
wanted to make sure the word elected was in there because the original thing that was difficult 2 years ago when we were working through it was that they would be selected. And so this elected, I think, was very important from a civic standpoint. Thank you.
Ms. Bates?
Right, think that there should be language included that exempts the students or prohibits the students from voting on anything with regard to personnel.
Okay, good point.
Okay, good point. My question is just in terms of process, is this another assignment? Would this be another assignment to policy committee
probably
to
go to policy.
draft the language? Or, because we don't have access to what she has, it would be helpful just to have that to be
Have
able
it.
to process. I don't know if this is, if we need to do that again. I'm asking guidance or suggestions from the board. Yes.
I think if it goes back to policy and they just make it as, the red line piece and
That would
add
be
that,
fine.
especially with Mrs. Bates' addition, and then it can come back. I don't know that it needs to be a resolution. It can be in the minutes of the
Yes.
policy.
That's
Okay.
what I'm suggesting, yes.
Thank
I
you.
agree, yeah. Okay, anything else then about that particular subject? All right, board bylaws. We had this on the agenda which was on a previous agenda, so it just kind of carried over, but I don't know because the ad hoc committee hasn't met, so we probably want to wait until after you guys meet. Okay, so you can just let us know when I know your meeting changed, the meeting date, so we'll just wait on that one until after the committee meets. And then the last one, Mr. Messer, process for policy review updates that are not part of standard review process.
Yeah, I think this was just being a new policy committee member. So what I think, and kind of we had a couple of trials to go through the process, but what I think is if there is I just want to pressure test this. So if there is a policy that a board member, somebody in the community approaches them, anybody approaches them, and they'd like to review it, do we add that to bring it to the board at inquiries and updates, or do we add that at board matters, and then is it then referred by a majority? How does that work? I'm just curious.
Ms. Bates?
Yeah, I mean, the board determines what policies the board wants to update, not people from the community. That's why we're elected, right? So it definitely is a board matter. And I'll just tell you, I mean, as the person who originated the policy committee, when the policy committee really got off track and we lost our 3-year rotation was when we had leadership of that committee that just brought random policies and focused on policies that were of some interest to some people, and we weren't really adhering to the work of the board, which is to make sure all of our policies were up to date and appropriately revised and reviewed. So yes, the board needs to decide what policies are to be reviewed if it's outside of the work plan. So it has to be an assignment from the board, not just a comment from the community, because that's what we do. We oversee the superintendent and treasurer, and we determine the policies for the Board of Education as
Yes,
a
sir.
board.
Yeah, and I don't dispute any of that, but I also agree that if somebody approaches me and says, you know, there's a policy and it's just not working, and here's a nuance, or here's a case that may not have been considered, then I think it's worthy of us having a conversation about that, and not saying, well, we can't talk about that because we are worried about all the other policies.
No, I'm saying bring it to the board.
Yeah, oh, well, that's what I laid out in my original process.
Not the committee.
Right.
Well, no, what I brought up was board matters or inquiries and updates, we would agree and refer it to committee. Yeah, that's what I said first.
Or assignments.
Yeah, okay.
It's a board assignment.
Okay. Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, I think that that's right, but I also think that bringing it to the board, because we're supposed to be listening to the community, so they give us an idea. We all bring it to the whole board. What I think we've also lost along the way is that financial policies go to the finance committee. It used to be that those things that dealt with instruction or were part of the educational programming went to student achievement, all right, for the initial look-see. And then that committee, after they had looked at it, because they've got the right administrative liaisons at the right committees. We've got the instructional people at the Student Achievement Committee. We've got the finance people at the Finance Committee. So you have those experts, so it's just not us doing, although we do tend to do more than we probably should. But I think it should then first, like the old times, 1,000 years ago, just about 2 years, it should go to the committee that has the most, I won't say interest, but the most expertise or the right work plan for it. And then, after that's happened, it needs definitely to go, because the other committees, those committees can't write policy. And sometimes that gets confusing too. Those committees start to do that. So I think you bring it to the board, just as Melanie has said, and then if the board's interested in it, if it's a particular jurisdiction, then it goes there, and then knowing that it needs to then go to policy.
I just wanted to comment because there are a couple of other things that I think kind of feed into this, and I actually am recommending that when ad hoc meets, there might be something written in the ad hoc that talks about under each committee that really just defines this a little better. There are a couple of things that come to my mind, having been chair of the policy committee and what happened. And I've said this before, and we can address this very easily, I think, when we do board development. There is no transition plan in place for when committees transition and people don't talk to each other about their roles. And so we need to make sure, and that's a board development piece, that we need to make sure that that happens when we are transitioning committees. So that's one thing. The other thing, too, I think, is there is just concerns, not that we don't want to hear from our public. We absolutely do. But I think that what I've seen is that in some of the committees, the community presentations are increasing. And so I'm wondering, are committees feeling like that they can get their work done when you have so many presentations and people are wanting whatever, you to fund their program or implement something or whatever, there has to be some way of looking at that. And maybe this is part of that review process, so that we are incorporating kind of the opinions of the public, but we have to also do the work that the committee is supposed to do on their work plan. So that's part of it. Ms. Bolton and then Ms. Bates.
Yeah, and I think that I believe that happened in part because a couple of elections ago, the number one issue was that we were not engaging the community. And then in the rewriting of the bylaws, when we eliminated the PPE committee, public parent engagement, it was clearly written that the other committees would take up the responsibility of involving the community. Now, that may have gone too far, but I do know that we wrote that indeed there's more opportunity of engagement in the committee process in the smaller, not broadcast or streamed approach. So I think I don't want to lose that because I think that's helpful and it's been good. But when you first impose something or try to first do something, it may get out of wire. It seems like we're getting a little bit more of a balance, at least in these first 2 months.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It needs to be better balanced.
Good.
Ms. Bates.
Right, and what we really have to be careful about, it's all great to have community engagement, but if you allow all these presentations because the community needs a voice, let's be honest about it, it's not the people who we hear from the least. And it's up to us to make sure that equity is ensured in this. So not just people who are sophisticated enough to run a PowerPoint and have the backing of physicians and all kinds of important people in the community making presentations. We have to control the presentations because we want to make sure that those who don't have those kinds of resources have a voice, and an equitable voice as well. So it's not just dependent on who comes to us, it's how we decide as a board what's most important to be heard.
Ms. Bolton?
One last, I promise. Part of this also was a confluence of the last 2 years or so trying to raise up and make and facilitate the growth in student voice. So some of these folks that have come before the committees have been our students. So all these things coming together, I think, made a more of a volume than perhaps was helpful, but at least it was a great transition, I think.
Okay. So when we get to assignments, we will probably assign that to ad hoc to take a look at. Okay. Any other comments about that process? All righty. Ms. Bates, please present the following resolution.
Yes, and this, oops, I'm on, okay. And this is a resolution that I am bringing over from the Health and Safety Committee. And it's a resolution in support of a City of Cincinnati charter amendment to allow the City of Cincinnati to use photo monitoring devices to detect traffic violations in school safety zones. I present this resolution as printed for adoption and hope for a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Everybody second. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Bates.
Yes, this came out of Health and Safety after culminating in a discussion with Melissa McVeigh, who is the representative from the city, who was so gracious to spend, oh goodness, about an hour with us in our Health and Safety Committee, discussing the pedestrian safety initiatives, Vision Zero, what the city is doing to support the safety of our students on the streets. And what would really help, and this also came out in a community meeting that some of us attended as well, that one thing that was taken away from the city was that could help in this effort to curb the speeders and violators, egregious violators of city traffic laws, is that we reinstate the ability to use traffic cameras, but only in school zones, and any revenues that result as a result of the violations are to go into pedestrian safety initiatives. So they're not I believe the reasoning behind this charter amendment was that these cameras were money makers, and that the law enforcement was setting up these traps so that they could fill the coffers. But in fact, what we're trying to do, as we heard from people from Hyde Park, is to curb the violators. And if the violators know that there are going to be traffic cameras, and it will be well publicized, do not speed in school zones, that this will help curb that kind of violation. They're just, according to the city manager and the chief of police, we don't have the resources in the police department to cover all of our school zones every day. As a matter of fact, what I didn't know, and this is really interesting, that the Ohio State Patrol does not cover our city. I believe even Hamilton County, but definitely our city. So whenever there's an accident on the expressway, our city police are diverted to the expressway to handle those accidents. And when you listen to the radio every day, there are accidents literally every day on our expressway. So there's just not the resources to cover the traffic violators and the potential for enforcing the laws. Cameras would be and just another, I guess you could say, weapon in the arsenal that the city can use. And the chief of police and Mr. Dehaney at the community meeting we attended, and Ms. McVeigh at our Health and Safety Committee agreed that this would be very helpful to curb these violations. And if the school board came out in favor of it, certainly that would be a very powerful voice.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
I was also at that committee meeting and agree with everything that Melanie said. I just wanted to add that in addition to helping, I think we have issues with student safety in a number of different schools. I think Hyde Park for sure. We also talked in the committee meeting about Dare West High. We also talked about Woodward, and we see this as a strategy that could help multiple schools all over the city.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. Bolton?
Just a couple of things. I think it's a great plan. I think it's also needed. It's really what we're asking the city to do is amend their charter, which requires a vote, actually. So what we're asking the city to do is go to the public and propose a charter amendment to, or a charter strike, to the community to vote on. So that's a big ask. And if they don't want to ask that, and I would understand it, because that would be a big deal, and I think it was even Vice Mayor Smitherman last year when we were appearing before council a number of times because of the pedestrian safety issue, had said that is going to require a charter amendment. It can only pertain, at least our proposal is it only pertains to school zones. And part of that reasoning is to return practice, if you will, or habit that when you are near or going through a school zone, you slow down. It's no longer practiced. It's no longer assumed, and that's a problem. I had a discussion, so to speak, with the chair, Ms. Bates. The only reservation I have about this is that I think it should be about when school is in session. Even though, as been pointed out in our committee meeting, we have ball games and we have plays and we have choir, we have community learning centers that are well beyond the hours of the school day. But my concern is partly a technical one. First of all, I don't know who sets the safety lights or cameras, the school zone lights. I don't know who would be setting the cameras, and I would hate for us to have to assume the responsibility of doing that. First of all, we don't have jurisdiction outside our campuses, but second of all, it would be just horrible if the day that we forgot to do it, something bad would happen. So I think there's a liability issue. That's why I think we should pass this as it is, but my concern is that it really should only be about full-day session.
Ms. Bates, final comment, and then we're going to vote.
Yes, a couple of things, and to respond to that, we see all over town the signs that say no right turn on red between, 8 and 4 on school days, and I've been hearing that that's difficult to enforce because there's summer school, and parochial schools and private schools may have different school days than public schools, and I just think if we have during school times, that would be equally difficult to enforce. So that's why I wanted to leave it open, and with community learning centers and extended hours and the ability to, have cameras there during, goodness, this even affects the parochial schools, a big game at Elder. I think that it's important to have it. The other thing I wanted to, I'm still speaking.
Oh, I know, but I'm trying to get us to move on. But go ahead, you can finish.
Well, I think this is important. If this does pass, I want to suggest to the board that we have a press conference announcing this so that the community knows we're very active in trying to employ Vision Zero, and that we are going to be working with the city to ensure the safety of our children and hopefully give the momentum towards a referendum a boost. So that would be my suggestion.
Well, I'm assuming you're going to make that an assignment, right?
I can.
Okay. All right, so any other questions or comments? Ms. Hughes, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
President Jones?
Yes. Resolution passes. Okay, Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
I do. I have a very short report in addition to the written report. I would like to, however, mention it, it is written in the superintendent's recommendation, and I did not mention this last week, but Mr. Joe Poole, one of our security assistants, passed away in the month of February. I believe that I acknowledged Larita Cornett last week, but did not acknowledge Mr. Poole, and so I'd like to take the opportunity to do that now and to express our sympathies to his family and also say how much we appreciate the opportunity for him to have worked with us and for his family to lend him to us for a nice length of time.
Thank you.
All right. So, headline, Girls to Women Collaborative. You may know or remember that several years ago, under board member Nelm's leadership, we started a MORE program, but did not have a Girls to Women program. And so about 4 years ago, we started this program, and it is flourishing and doing extremely well. We are in the midst of teaching our young ladies how to be leaders and how to stand up for themselves, which is significantly important, especially in this month. So if there were 3 key things we want everyone to really remember as we think about the leadership of our young women, is to offer them opportunities, to be able to build their confidence, and to develop leaders. So our Girls to Women Collaborative held an annual conference, and it was just not too long ago, where 230 of our women, grades 5 through 12, participated in an all-day conference in which they had the opportunity to find their sparkle, have courageous conversations, and use their voice for value. So we're very excited about that. In addition, we have an upcoming event where we have some young women who will have the opportunity to participate in a leadership conference over the summer held at Camp Joy, and this will be overnight, and so we're really excited about that opportunity. It will be a 3-day session at Camp Joy in which they will be immersed in leadership training and workshops, and most importantly, they will be given the skills and taught how to come back and influence their school communities, so to take action. And if you haven't heard, next Sunday, March the 8th, marks the International Women's Day. And as you can see by the young lady holding her hands, the theme this year is #EachForEqual. So I think it's important to recognize that this movement actually started in the early 1800s, when women were fighting for the right to vote, as well as fighting for the right to have equal pay for equal jobs. And so we continue to persist. And so that concludes my report in addition to the written report and the superintendent's recommendations.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments? Okay, I need a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Hughes, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Bolton?
This is just a process piece. And the treasurer's not here, but normally some of these items regarding insurance would have gone through the finance committee. It's usually kind of perfunctory, or people, and I don't know if it's due to all the other things that we've had to be doing, or if the review of all contracts counts, but I don't remember all of these coming through finance. I'm perfectly satisfied with them, but I didn't know if that was a change or it's an oversight on my part.
The only thing I would add is
Every insurance contract is marketed each year by our broker, which is Assured Partners, formerly Nice Lukens.
Right.
So they are looking each year for those contracts. The Assured Partners contract was RFP'd a few years ago. Annually, we come to the board to discuss, at the end of the year process,
Okay.
to discuss the contracts. But I don't think we've taken these specifically to finance before. I'm happy to report individually on the insurance contracts.
I think it's on the work plan, and I think we've had so many other things with the abatement and what have you, and the levy early on.
Sure.
So, but I don't want to lose that because I think we have some good discussion that occurs there. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Hughes, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
President Jones?
Yes, thank you. Inquiries or updates? Inquiries and updates? Any? Okay. Any assignments? Mr. Messer and then Ms. Bates.
Yes, I think probably we all agree that there was very compelling testimony today about the Hyde Park School, and I couldn't help but visualize my own children in a crosswalk with that situation. It's no secret, we've had to find additional space to accommodate what is truly a growing need in that community, which is a beautiful thing, but it has created kind of this unfortunate situation of some of the children having to cross the street. So as we are working through the expansion and growth plan and thinking about long-term solutions, I would just like to make an assignment that we develop a risk mitigation plan that carries us through this school year that engages Cincinnati Police Department and the City of Cincinnati, along with parents and staff of the school. I had even a couple of texts. There was something on Facebook, but a couple more texts of people saying I'd be willing to help out with the security vest, any types of donations like that. But I think if we get a risk mitigation plan together that everyone feels good about, I think that would be a great path for us to manage the next few months until we get to next school year. And then the second is...
Wait a minute.
Go ahead, Ms. Bates.
We need board agreement on that.
Well,
I mean, are you telling the administration, or are you referring it to health and safety? Because we just, at health and safety, had a member of the city administration there and have a relationship with her. So just to,
So I hear you. A kid almost got hit on Thursday. I just found out today. I think we need a risk mitigation plan that can't wait for a committee to get together and talk about it. I think we can all agree this is a problem. So yes, I think health and safety could take it up, but I still think in the interim, we need a risk mitigation plan, because if a kid gets hit tomorrow, we're gonna all wish that we had acted sooner. So that's my only point there. If others feel differently, then I can be overruled on that one. And then...
Let me, because I think before we move on, and it's given as an assignment, we all need to agree on how we move this forward. I think it's no doubt that this is a crucial issue. I would suggest, I hear you saying that this might be something, I don't know that even if we do a mitigation plan, that's gonna take time to work through, and I hear you, it's more immediate than that, but maybe, I think I agree with Ms. Bates in saying this is it could be a priority issue for us to deal with, but it has to go through committee to process it. The mitigation plan, when I think of something that I'm thinking immediacy is like, is there anything we can do tomorrow?
So can I add something? I think our responsibility is to manage the superintendent and the treasurer and set policy. The superintendent is responsible for running the district. And I think a committee can talk about that, but at the end of the day, the safety and all that, I don't know that that even really has to go to I think that's part of administration. I think that's why I made an assignment, that I just think that just having a formalized plan specifically to that, just like we don't review all the other safety plans, at least that I'm aware of, in every single building, but this one very specifically, since it is urgent, that I'm just saying I think the person who's ultimately responsible for this is the superintendent, and that's where I thought it landed.
Mr. Lindy?
Yeah, I just wanted to share my agreement with what Ryan is sharing. And I think I think this is a great example of something that needs to move quickly. I think that individual administrators can move more quickly than a committee can. I think there could still be a great role for health and safety to get updates on how that is going and be able to vet ideas and share feedback, and maybe we could share an update to the board. But I wanted to share that I agree with what Ryan was saying.
Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, I would say that the pedestrian safety piece is already part of the at least draft or proposed Health and Safety Committee, so it will always rest there, at least in this calendar year. I think the way to maybe phrase the assignment would be to have the superintendent report back to us within a week or so of the issues or plans she's already put in place, and then so that we can see it. I think everybody's right today about this. It's an emergency, but she's already put some things in place. There are more things that she could put into place. But again, everybody has to understand the city also has some responsibilities. We don't have jurisdiction. Even those civilians that are out there helping people cross the street, that's great that they're doing it, and it's great that our staff is doing it for the sake of the children. But you leave our campuses, that's also the city. So I think the superintendent can put together the plan, at least to get us through until spring break. And then she'll have to talk to police officers about what we can do out there as well. So I think everybody, it should rest with health and safety, and it does. But right now, I think we ask the superintendent to share with us whatever plans she and the safety folks, and also the police officers. Because I've been at school dismissal in a number of places, and when our staff, even at PRM, goes out to direct traffic, the police officer that might be there says, you need to get back because you don't have any authority. And so these are things that we have to consider. So if Mr. Messer, I think we have agreement that it's urgent, but just to make it an assignment to the superintendent. And later on, there might be some opportunity for mitigating study or whatever, too. But I guess it's so urgent, maybe there's no time for that.
Yeah. I have a feeling that the superintendent already has some ideas.
Sure she does.
So, and we haven't asked her, but I agree with that. I think the superintendent,
Okay.
if that's
Yeah,
okay with you.
and
to
I just
direct
think it's
the
that
assignment.
urgent that
We need to deal with it.
I think
we
some
don't
of us,
disagree.
I think all of us, frankly, were caught off guard today, many of us, or yesterday, and maybe even including some from the administration. So I just think it's that urgent to make sure that we can pass the red face test on that one. And then the second one is,
and again, I wanted to comment on that. We have children hit almost every week, it seems. I mean, we had children hit at Covedale, 2 weeks ago? This is an ongoing issue, and I know the superintendent will be able to present a plan, at least in the short term, because it's something we've been working on for a long time. So not that this may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but certainly this isn't an isolated incident, and it does deserve attention.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Messer, your second assignment.
yes, and this is just kind of a request. I know the district is working on that topic around infectious disease and the impact of that nationally, and so maybe sharing back with the board plans as that is coming up. I sent a link to the board members tonight that two parents sent to me, but just making sure that we communicate to the board, and then making sure it's readily available to our public, to our teachers, all staff, community members, et cetera, that in the event that we have to manage through that we have plans in place and they know what those are.
Thank you. Other assignments? Ms. Bates, sorry.
Okay. Oh, I am going to make the assignment. I'm not sure that we need a press conference now that I'm thinking of it, but at least a press release regarding the resolution, the passage of the resolution in favor of cameras, traffic cameras at our school zones, and also that the superintendent is working on a plan or has a plan in place that she will be sharing with authorities to, in the short term, make quick changes to improve the pedestrian safety of our students.
Thank you. Any other, Ms. Bolton?
One assignment that pertains to the resolution tonight, I'd like the superintendent to appoint whomever are our experts to at least dialogue with the city about just how the cameras work and how even the lights for school zones work and who has responsibility for that and how far in advance it can be determined or what have you. So just if there's an opportunity for a meeting with our administrators, with the city administrators that know something about the traffic engineering and the safety, I think that would be great. And I appreciate you saying not yet for the press conference, because it would be great for us. It should be released, because I think it's important that we're asking for this. But we need to find out more stuff so that we can answer whatever questions arise.
Oh, and to add to that, an immediate transmittal to the city manager, mayor, and council, the contents of the resolution, in addition to the press release, so they don't find out about it on Channel 9 and Channel 12.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. And then I'll make the assignment to ad hoc to recommend action on the process for policy review and updates that are not part of the standard review process. Okay, any other assignments? Having no other agenda before us, the meeting is adjourned.
Eve, did you do this work plan? Did you type this up? Yes, ma'am.